seconds each.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
गलत कर देते हो क्लिक
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala falah. Hayya ala falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. This is a part of chapter 5 of the Holy Quran, verse 48. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً واحدة. For every one of you, we appointed a law and a way. And if Allah had wanted, He would have made you a single people. Next verse is chapter 5, verse 99. ما على الرسول إلا البلاغ والله يعلم ما تبدون وما تكتمون. The duty of the messenger is only to deliver the message. And Allah knows what you do openly and what you hide. And the last verse is from chapter 10, verse 99. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا أَفَأَنْتَ تُكْرِهُ النَّاسَ حَتَّى يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. And if your Lord had pleased, all those who are in the earth would have believed, all of them. Will you then force men till they are believers? Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim. The topic of today's khutbah is, does Islam allow diversity? And I've chosen this topic because we see that in many, I was going to say Islamic, but I won't say Islamic, in many countries where Muslims are in a majority, it is not necessarily Islamic, people are forced, coerced into not being able to practice and preach their religion. They're forced to become Muslims. Girls are kidnapped. And there are many. And the non-Muslim communities are subjected to many difficulties. Let me rephrase that. Not difficulties, but torture and persecution. And then when people in the West object to these things, because they say, well, if Muslims are behaving in this way, then it must be Islam. I had experience of this. Many years ago, a colleague of mine, we would talk about Islam and so on. And one day he said to me, you say, if I embrace Islam, then I will develop in my character all these virtues and moral excellences. I said, yes. So he said, okay, answer this question and I will embrace Islam. And I said, yes, fine, ask away. And he said, well, why is it that I do not see these virtues and moral excellences in the characters of those who are born Muslims? And I was speechless. He said, these things should already exist in the characters of those who are born Muslims, because their parents should have taught them all these things. But what do people teach their kids? Is hate, intolerance, and so on. Someone sent me a photograph of a motor repair shop from Pakistan. And And there's a board outside, and it proudly says what? Doesn't say we work honestly. Doesn't say we do the best quality of repair. It doesn't say we speak the truth. It proudly announces, with Allah's help, we do not provide any service. Who to? Not to Hindus or Sikhs or Bhais or Buddhists. To Shias, yes, and Ahmadis. To Shias and Ahmadis. If this is the touchstone by which you judge your moral character, then maybe you can get away with it in Pakistan, but you can't get away with it outside Pakistan. And I mentioned last week the law lecturer at Bristol University, and one module he teaches is human rights. And he showed slides saying that Islam endangers people's human rights. And if you're going to force them, if you're going to coerce them, then this is what people are going to do. This is the board that I mentioned is an example of how Muslims behave. And why do they behave in this way? Because that is what they are taught. In the mosques and in the madrasas and everywhere else, even in ordinary schools. In the good old days when I went to school in Pakistan, our religious studies teacher was complaining about the lack of interest Muslims have in propagation of Islam. And I said, well, that's not true. And he said, oh, do you know of anyone who propagates Islam? And I said, yes. There is this mosque in Berlin and there is this mosque in Woking, and Islam is propagated from there. And he immediately looked up and he said, are you a Mirzai? And I was young, I didn't know what a Mirzai was. And I said, no, I'm a Muslim. So he said, where do you go to pray? So I said, I go to this mosque in Brondworth Road. And he said, so you are a Mirzai. And then after that, he started beating me. For every little thing, he used to beat all the kids, to be fair. He used to mistreat, abuse, beat all the kids. But he would specially pick me up. And eventually, when I would not desist, so I started making trouble in his class. So I would knock over desks, throw shoes around, make noise, scream and shout. And eventually, one day, he beat me badly, and then he threw me out of the class. And he said, you don't deserve to be taught Islam. This is a teacher, this is in good old days when extremism wasn't prevalent in Pakistan, when people were relatively tolerant. And this school was actually built by an organization called Anjuman Hamayat Islam, and our members were among the founder members of this organization until they got thrown out for being Ahmadis. So if this is your behavior, then why do you get upset when people say that Islam teaches intolerance? Because, take my example, take thousands of other examples of Christians and Hindus and so on in Pakistan. But what was the Holy Prophet's character? What did he do? The Holy Prophet arrived in Medina. There were a few Muslims living there, some from Medina, some who came from Mecca. And the first thing the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did was to call together the leaders of all the communities, and he entered into a treaty. It's called Misaq Medina, the Covenant of Medina, the Treaty of Medina. And this can be summarized in a couple of sentences. No one will force their religion on anyone else. Everyone will be free to preach and practice their religion. But if there's an attack from outside Medina, all the communities in Medina will join together regardless of their religion to defend Medina. In summary, as long as you are loyal to the state, that is the only thing that matters. The state will not interfere in your religion. This is the Holy Prophet's example. Further than that, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually entered into a treaty with Christians in Sinai. And when people went there, they found this treaty. What is in Mount Sinai now is actually a copy, because this was carbon dated and so on. And the Christians in that place, that seminary, they explained that the Turks, when they ruled the area, took the original back with them to Istanbul. And that treaty said, Muslim state will not tax Christian priests and nuns and so on. Muslim state will not occupy church lands, will not take them over. They will remain church property. If need be, the Muslim state at its own expense will repair Christian places of worship. And if there aren't any and there are Christians, the Muslim state at its own expense will build churches for Christians. Now, this treaty was between Christians and the Holy Prophet Muhammad, but it sets out a precedent. I mean, there were no Buddhists living there, there were no Hindus living there, there were no Jews living there. So the treaty was with the inhabitants of that area. Talking about Jews, you've seen people who go to the Wailing Wall, the Jews who go to the Wailing Wall and pray there. That is supposed to be a part of the original Solomon's temple. Who built that? How did that come about? You would think that the Prophet Solomon, Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam, built it. But originally he did. But what happened was that when Muslims were defeated in Spain, and Muslims and Jews were being persecuted, and Jews were being burned at the stake by the Christians, Solomon the Magnificent sent Muslim navy. He sent the Muslim navy to save the Jews and Christians in Spain. And he is the one who took the Jews back to Palestine. and put them there. It wasn't the Balfour Declaration that originally did that. It was Solomon the Great. It was Suleiman the Great, Suleiman the Magnificent, who did that. And Jews then complained that they had nowhere to worship and so on. And he then tried to find the remains of Solomon's temple. And he built that wall. This is exactly in line with the treaty that the Holy Prophet entered into with Christians. Now, if you can do it with Christians and if you can do it with Jews, why can't you do it with other religions? The principle has been established. As I said, there were no Buddhists in Sinai. There were no Hindus there. Otherwise, I'm sure the Holy Prophet Muhammad would have set the same example. The point I'm making is that people judge others by those people's actions. See, every book of religion, let's say Old Testament or New Testament or the Holy Quran and so on, says good things. But the question is, do the people who follow that religion actually put it into practice? Listen to what the Holy Quran says. For every one of you, we appointed a law and a way. And if Allah had pleased, He would have made all of you a single people, meaning you would have all had the same religion. Chapter 5, verse 48. Then the Quran says, and if your Lord had pleased, all those who are in the earth, they would have believed, all of them. This is not even about Islam. This is about believing in Allah. God here is saying that there are atheists, but I don't care. If I'd wanted to, I would have forced them to believe in me, but I don't. As someone said, people in Muslim majority countries talk against secularism. Which being is the greatest secularist? Can anyone guess? Allah. When Satan said, I'm not going to obey you, did Allah burn him in hell? Allah said, no. Go and see if you can convince other people of what you are teaching. And I leave it to people, whether they choose you or whether they choose me. How much more secular could Allah get? And then God sets the purpose of sending the Holy Prophet Muhammad. The duty of the messenger is only to deliver the message. That's it. He's not going to force you. Verse 99 of chapter 10, it says, will you force people until they believe? It's translated as men, but in the Quran reflection on the Quran, yesterday I commented on the fact that many times when the word nas is used, it's translated as men, so it doesn't leave women out. It actually means people. Will you force people until they believe? People say, well, in early days, so many people embraced Islam. Yes, they embraced Islam because they saw Muslims' character. And now they don't embrace Islam because what do they see? They see Muslim character. So the people responsible for all the Islamophobia and so on, to a great degree, are Muslims themselves because of what they show others. I mean, take about the example of this bombing. I think it was in Birmingham some years ago. There was some concert or other. Young boys, young girls were blown up, killed. Some lost arms and legs and so on. What do you expect their parents to feel about Muslims and Islam? And I have to say, I have to praise the tolerance of the British, because had this happened in a Muslim majority country, then there would have been riots in the streets, and all members of the community who perpetrated this heinous crime, whether guilty or not, would have been killed. But in England, not one single Muslim was killed for this. I have shown you from the verses of the Holy Quran that Allah says there will be diversity. And people on the Day of Judgment will be accountable to Him, not to any worldly authority. And if we show non-Muslims the example set by the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his companions and Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum and others, then people will embrace Islam. But unfortunately, people see our example of ISIS and ISIL and the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, and how they treated Yazidi women and children and so on. And we shouldn't really blame them for hating Islam and Islamophobia. As I've said, God says, we stand in the footsteps of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. So if his duty was only to deliver the message, our duty is only to deliver the message. And God is asking us, when I've allowed people to believe or not to believe, who are you to coerce and force people to believe in something? The sad thing is that our knowledge and understanding of the Holy Quran is actually limited to just learning to read the Arabic, and that is all. And we don't actually reflect upon its message and think about it. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareemun malikun barrufur rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व अला आलि मुहम्मदिन कमा सल्लैता अला इब्राहीम व अला आलि इब्राहीम इन्नका हमीदुम मजीद। अल्लाहुम्मा बारिक अला मुहम्मदिन व अला आलि मुहम्मदिन कमा बारकता अला इब्राहीम व अला आलि इब्राहीम इन्नका हमीदुम मजीद। अल्लाहुम्मा अंसुर मन नसर दीन मुहम्मदिन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम वजअलना मिनहुम वक़्सुल मन खज़ल दीन मुहम्मदिन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम वला तजअलना मिनहुम। इबादल्लाह रहमकुमुल्लाह इन्नल्लाह यामुरु बिल अदलि वल इहसानि व इताइ ज़िल कुर्बा व यन्हा अनिल फ़हशाइ वल मुनकरि वल बग़yi यइज़ुकुम लअल्लकुम तज़क्करून। उज़्कुरुल्लाह यज़्कुरुकुम वद्कुरूहु यस्तजिब लकुम व ज़िक्रुल्लाहि अकबर वल्लाहु यअलमु मा तस्नऊन।
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya al-salah, hayya al-falah. Qad qamatis salah, qad qamatis salah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
अल्लाहु अकबर। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन अर्रहमानिर रहीम मालिकि यौमिद्दीन इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन इहदिनस सिरातल मुस्तकीम सिरातल लज़ीना अनअमता अलैहिम गैरिल मग़दूबि अलैहिम वलद्दॉल्लीन।
Amin.
अलम तरा कैफा फ़अला रब्बुका बिअस्हाबिल फील अलम यजअल कैदहुम फ़ी तदलील व अरसल अलैहिम तैरन अबाबील तरमीहिम बिहिजारतिन मिन सिज्जील फजअलहुम कअस्फिन मअकूल। अल्लाहु अकबर। समीअल्लाहु लिमन हमिदा।
Rabbana lakal hamd.
अल्लाहु अकबर। अल्लाहु अकबर। अल्लाहु अकबर। अल्लाहु अकबर। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन अर्रहमानिर रहीम मालिकि यौमिद्दीन इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन इहदिनस सिरातल मुस्तकीम सिरातल लज़ीना अनअमता अलैहिम गैरिल मग़दूबि अलैहिम वलद्दॉल्लीन। आमीन। इन्ना अअतैनाकल कौसर फसल्ली लिरब्बिका वन्हर इन्ना शानिअका हुवल अबतर। अल्लाहु अकबर। समीअल्लाहु लिमन لمن حمدا
ربنا
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Thank you for joining us for our Friday service. Our next broadcast will be on Sunday, 9 a.m. UK time, Call of the Messiah in Urdu, and then 9:30 Call of the Messiah in English. Until we meet again, I leave you with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you are, may Allah keep all of you safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.